Colorado. Within our state boundaries is land once claimed by Spanish kings and Mexican governors. Although native people initially lived in the region, the first Europeans to visit came from Spain. Early Hispanic families moved north from New Mexico to settle in Colorado. During this program, we discover who the Hispanics are, where they came from, how they lived, and what they have contributed to the wonderful state of Colorado. Colorado has a rich and unique Hispanic heritage. Between 1540 and 1542, Spanish exploration and prospecting in Colorado were more frequent than the records reveal. Interaction with indigenous Americans was influential and in many ways a mix of cultures evolved.
The mestizo culture is the Spanish and indigenous mix. For example, in my own family, I have a Gallegos on my mother's side and we have Romero on my father's side, and they're both Spanish names, but the two families were quite different. And on my father's side, they were indigenous native first, and then they mixed with the Spaniard. So that my father's more the mestizo culture than my mother's side.
Another thing that I used to feel also in reading the history book was seemed like civilization moved in from the east to the west, when actually there was already a civilization in the west. And it's just different cultures that eventually came together, and we try to make the best of it.
Over the past 400 years, the Hispanic experience in Colorado has given rise to many terms, each reflecting the diverse and dynamic identities of this ethnic group.
According to the people that I polled here, they don't want to say that we're Hispano, Indo-Hispano, Chicano, Mexican-American, or anything.
The word Mexican could not be used. Many of the people, were trying to say, well, my grandfather came from Spain, or, looking roots so that they were not Mexican. I mean, it was a tragedy. So they would rather call themselves at the time Spanish. The awareness that came, as people, especially the youth in the late 60s, yeah, I'm a Mexican, I'm a Chicano, all that. That is, for me, one of the greatest jumps that happened in the Hispanic community.
It seems like different people within the Hispanic community want to refer to themselves as Chicanos or Mexican American or Latinos, but seems like the more popular terms used today are like Latino or Hispanic. And I don't get too hung up on labels, because I think what identifies a person's background or his character are his cultural values.
The term that I like best is Hispanic. Hispanics are those who have some roots with the Hispanic, the Southwest, Mexico. So the terms have been evolving. I think that the most common one that we have now is Latino.
Spaniards brought their language with them when they first explored the Southwest. Through generations, they retained their native Spanish tongue, and Colorado territorial government officials were often bilingual. In 1876, the Colorado State Constitution was written not only in English, but also in Spanish and German. Today, Spanish is the second most common language spoken in Colorado.
Speaking Spanish on the school grounds was not allowed. That made me feel pretty uncomfortable and sad. My father noticed that experience. He asked me one day what had happened, and I told him what had happened, and he said, well, just think about this. Whoever speaks more than one language is actually worth that many individuals. So I made sure that I never forgot my Hispanic roots and language.
We're losing the very unique language that we have that has been studied and researched, and people say that we speak a very old Castilian Spanish. If you were to ask my mother or one of my sisters for a chair, the formal word is silla, but we still use a very old form of the word, which is sieta. So it is a very unique language.
Spanish was one of the foreign languages spoken here before English. And it's probably spoken here at least 100 years earlier than English was spoken on this continent. Maintaining the language is one of my big things, because if you lose a Spanish language, you start losing the Hispanic culture. Because once you start losing the language, you're no longer going to be listening to Hispanic type music or Mexican music. You're not going to be participating in traditional events because you're going to feel that you don't fit in. What I would like to see happen in our community is to maintain our cultural values.